Hey everyone. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a true crime story, gently. You lean into your pillow as the room tucks itself into shadow, and the shape of a quiet town gathers at the edge of your imagination. Sycamore trees with pale, papery bark, storefronts with letters rubbed thin by the sun, and a two-lane street that curls like a ribbon between porches where wind chimes gossip in the dusk. You settle your phone, so the glow becomes a little moon. There's a low hum in the distance, maybe your fan, maybe the highway, and in that hum, you step into a place called Willow Creek, where people still wave from the steering wheel and remember where they were when the mill closed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Share your corner of the night so this circle feels more complete. Now, turn off the lights, switch on a fan for a soft hush of noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You walk down Maple Street in the late summer heat, the sort that hangs like a damp curtain. Your steps are soft, sneaker soles quiet on the sidewalk. The air smells like cut grass and a little bit of river mud and minnows and old wood. There's a faded poster still thumbtacked to the corkboard outside the diner. Not an active notice, just a ghost of one, edges curled, announcing a vigil from years ago. Candles, names, dates, and a blurred photograph of a smile. People in Willow Creek learn to stop tearing it down. It doesn't get in the way. It only sits there, like an extra memory. You push open the door to the diner, bells tinkling. The waitress knows what you'd order without asking: grilled cheese, fries, iced tea, and a lemon slice you never actually squeeze. You slide into a corner booth where the red vinyl squeaks and stare at the glass sugar pourer that always clumps on rainy days. The TV above the counter murmurs with that small-town cable channel, the one that shows school board meetings and lost pet alerts. Tonight it's looping a segment, the words crawling across the bottom. Arrest in 2004, disappearance, shock in town. You watch a still image of a man you've passed in the supermarket for years, pushing a cart with cereal and cat litter, his face now outlined by a digital rectangle as if the screen is trying to hold him in place. You know the case, because everyone here does. In 2004, you're younger, you carry quarters for payphones, and you have a ringtone that tries to sound like a real bell. It's October. Dry leaves scudding along the curb, like paper fish. A college sophomore named Lena never makes it home from her library shift. Her bicycle is found leaned carefully by the war memorial, as though it's waiting for her to come back and reclaim it. The memorial has 14 names chiseled into it, men who went away between 1,917 and 1,918 and never returned. And if you run your fingers over the letters, you can feel stone that the weather has smoothed like bone. The bicycle chain is clean, the chain guard gleaming. The front light still works. You click it on. 1 blink for steady, 2 for flashing. Like choices. There's a town rumor that the memorial statue sometimes turns its head. You smile at yourself for even thinking that, but you still look up. The soldier keeps staring at the same point across the street, where the bakery had a hand-painted sign for 20 years. The weird detail no one can explain is that the statue's right hand is a little shinier than the rest, as if someone keeps polishing it. Maybe it's just rain patterns. Maybe it's the joke everyone tells freshman year, that touching it before an exam brings good luck, and some people do, whispering an apology to history. That odd brightness sticks with you because it's the kind of thing your mind returns to when you lie awake, wondering about what the town couldn't. You step back out of the diner with grease on your fingertips and the night sliding into cooler shades. The arrest came this morning, your phone blinking with messages from people you only hear from when the past reopens, like a book you thought you'd already filed away. They say the police finally matched something from a box in a room that smells like old paper and sharpened pencils, a room you imagine with rolling ladders and fluorescent lights that hum a little too loud. If you're wondering whether that's possible after so long, you remember that the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, launched nationwide in 1998, and small-town departments slowly learned to thread their local strands into that national web. When you catch that small, crisp fact, it feels like a brass tack holding fabric to a board. You picture profiles added year after year, names attached, names withheld, numbers lining up, and sometimes, finally, agreeing. You head toward the Riverwalk, where the lamplight pools in gentle ovals. The cicadas have turned down their volume, and a heron stands so still in the shallows that you think it's a sculpture until it moves. You hold the railing, feeling the metal warmed by the day, still giving back heat. You imagine Lena's last night as a string of small, ordinary decisions. Clock out, wave at the security guard you always mean to learn the name of, stop to tie a shoelace that keeps loosening because you wore the old sneakers, not the new ones. In this second-person lane, you carry her choices the way you'd carry a stack of thin porcelain plates, carefully, aware of how easily a whole set becomes a scatter of shards. News spreads here in layered ways. A friend texts you. Your neighbor calls their sister. The coffee shop posts a cryptic heart emoji. The church puts a note on its Facebook page asking for compassion. And then the mayor, hinge-voiced and careful, gives a statement. The alleged perpetrator is someone whose mailbox you've watched tilt further each winter, someone you've seen patting the head of a golden retriever in the park, someone who, if asked, would probably say good morning and mean it. You learn that the key came from a scrap of fabric found miles from where anyone thought to look in 2004. A patch of brush that only burned last year in one of those controlled fires the Forestry Service sets when they're trying to save a place by letting it briefly flame. The strange little detail police mention, almost apologetically, is that the fabric was lodged in an old fence of woven wire that used to mark the edge of the strawberry farm. Out on Route 12, the farm that sells shortcakes on the first Saturday of June and lets kids run with stained fingers and a crossed sugar high. Somehow, on some night no one saw, the fence caught and held a whisper of someone's shirt, and years later, after rain and frost and sun, the wire gave it up like a confession. You picture the tiny weave of threads, the way forensic techs might lift them with tweezers like a hairstylist lifting a lock, lay them into a petri dish, and close the lid softly as if not to wake anything. You walk past the courthouse, a building that wears a clock it can't quite keep straight. The hour hand always looks embarrassed. On the lawn, 3 teenagers throw a frisbee and pretend not to look at the TV van parked by the curb. The reporter is the same one who covers the Pumpkin Way Off in the school musical. Tonight, their voice carries a different weight, and you can hear the sentence that becomes a headline even before it's spoken. A long cold case warms just enough to melt the ice above it. You watch the camera light turn red. For a second, you see your face reflected in the lens, smaller than a thumbnail, and you think about how stories shrink us until they need us to stand in them. If you've ever studied memory, even just a little bit, you know there's an open debate about whether recalling an event strengthens it or reshapes it. Some psychologists argue that every time you remember, you're not pulling a file, you're rewriting a scene, adding the drizzle of tonight's rain to the storms of then. Others say certain moments lock like fossils, pressed into sediment by pressure and time, resistant to the chisel of retelling. You carry that unresolved argument with you as you pass the library steps where Lena used to sit on her break, a paperback folded spine forward in a way that would make purists cringe. You picture your own memories as paper boats you've launched into this town's creek. Some float in circles, others snag on twigs, and a few, stubborn, drift on. In the grocery store earlier, in the fluorescent afternoon, you saw him before the arrest, before the headlines standing near the end caps where they stacked the 2-for-1 cereal. He held a small list written in blue ink. He glanced up, smiled the way strangers do, polite and brief, not quite meeting your eyes, and something about the tilt of his head struck you as familiar, though you couldn't place it. You walked on, picked up milk, and realized You'd forgotten the cinnamon again. That fleeting strand of ordinary human contact feels radioactive now, humming faintly in your pocket. You tell yourself that's how it always is when a face moves from the crowd into the frame. Windows glow along Sycamore Avenue like aquarium glass. You peer in as you pass. A couple eating late bowls of spaghetti. A teacher grading papers with a red pen that looks too bright. And a teenager kneeling on a rug, teaching a corgi to shake. The town is alive in small breaths. And still, every conversation tonight gently steers back to the same unmapped turn. What does it mean if he did it? What does it mean if he didn't? The alleged part of alleged clings like a cobweb. You don't know yet what the defense will say. You don't know what's admissible and what's rumor. You only know that an arrest is not an ending. But people crave chapters, and they've been stuck on the same page for 2 decades. You stand on the bridge and let the boards creak under your weight. A train passes far off, its horn a long, mournful line. You try to imagine the meeting point, the day the lab tech screen bloomed with numbers that matched numbers, the email that went out, and the phone that rang on a detective's desk where a faded photo has been tucked into the clear plastic of the desk blotter for years. In 1998, CODIS becomes official nationwide. You remind yourself again. And in 2024, the software updates. And in 2025, the backlog finally gets its afternoon in the light because a grant clears overtime. A truth like that sits clean and cool against the feverish idea that everything is chaos. Sometimes it's both. Messy people and tidy systems. And somewhere between them, a name rises to the surface. Behind you, the diner TV keeps looping. Inside, the waitress refills the sugar. You turn your collar up against a breeze that smells like river and a little like old pennies. The memorial soldier keeps staring past you, hand still a little too bright, as if touching it might tell you which way the story bends. You walk home slower than you need to, because walking is a way to think without scaring your thoughts. And tonight, your thoughts are skittish deer at the edge of a field. You breathe in, breathe out, and keep going. The town doing the same around you, lamps blinking, dogs sighing, a door latch clicking like a tiny lock finding its place. The morning after the headline, you wake to that thin gray light that looks like paper dipped in milk. The fan is still whispering. The room cool enough that you pull the sheet up to your chin for a second just to enjoy the softness. Your phone blinks. A thread of messages, tiny blue and gray bubbles choreographing worry, curiosity, and that strange relief people feel when the unknown finally acquires a shape. You don't answer right away. You drink water, swing your feet to the floor, and let your toes find the rug's edge. The day smells like coffee you haven't made yet and rain that hasn't fallen yet. You walk past the hallway mirror, and you catch yourself this slightly more watchful version of you, the one who has spent a night walking old streets in your head. Outside, the neighborhood is up and moving. Wheelie bins lining the curb like a parade of navy rectangles, dogs determinedly leading humans, and the mailbox flag across the street raised like a red thumb. Somewhere, a porch radio is murmuring an AM station. Farm report, high school scoreboard, the kind of low-stakes chatter that knits a place together. Today, inside that hum, a thread of shock thrums. It's like someone changed the key of a familiar song. You make coffee, the scoop counting out patience into the filter. When the kettle sighs, you pour slowly and watch the grounds bloom. A small, ordinary act done properly feels like a ritual, and rituals steady you. You put on sneakers, the newer pair this time, and step into air that holds a promise of rain. The clouds look like someone sketched them in pencil and didn't press hard enough to finish the line. You head to town hall because your legs decide that's where your mind needs to go. A cluster of people has already formed along the steps. Some you recognize. Mr. Havel from the bike shop, who always adds air for free. Miss Torres, the history teacher who wears earrings in the shape of tiny globes, and one of the firefighters with a mustache so impressive it might deserve its own pension. They're not here to protest or celebrate. They're here, like you, are looking for the shape of the next sentence. There's a board taped to the front doors, a list of scheduled meetings scrawled in dry erase handwriting, a planning commission, a paint color approval for the downtown facade program, a hearing on leaf pickup schedules. The normalness of it hits you like a warm wave. Bureaucracy keeps turning its gears, even when hearts stutter. A detective you've seen at parades stands near the entrance, pressed shirt, sleeves rolled, and tie slightly loosened. He speaks quietly to whoever asks, his voice a lake kept smooth on purpose. You move closer. He says terms like probable cause, and chain of custody, and arraignment. Words that sound like fence posts, hammered in to hold back rushing water. You remember, without knowing why this memory matters, that the Miranda warning has been required since 1966, when the Supreme Court held that suspects must be informed of their rights. The fact flickers like a street lamp that comes on a little earlier than the others. You think about all the times on TV you've heard the words, "You have the right to remain silent." Today, those words are not a trope. They are a thin sheet of law laid between a person and the full heat of the state. You drift to the edge of the group and overhear the librarian speaking to a reporter, her tone soft and steady, her eyes behind square frames. "We never forgot," she says. We reshelved around her absence. The phrase is so perfectly librarian that you feel tears press behind your eyes. Reshelved around her absence. That's what this town has done in so many ways. Set things back in order with a Lena-shaped space, left respectfully open. The weird detail that everyone's texting about, one of those maddening tidbits that refuses to fit neatly, is that in the suspect's garage, neath a pegboard with neatly hung wrenches and a coffee tin of mismatched screws, investigators found an old church bingo cage. Not the kind with blinking lights, but the old wire sphere with a crank handle, the kind you turn and turn until a wooden ball drops with a cluck, and people can't stop wondering why. He didn't go to that church. He wasn't known to play. Maybe he bought it at a yard sale, someone suggests. Maybe he liked the sound it made. Maybe. It's a detail like a loose thread on a sweater. Harmless, probably. And yet, your fingers won't stop testing it. You walk to the library, because that's where this began, in the public imagination, and also because public buildings feel like sanctuaries when a community has rattled the stack stand, the checkout chime pings, and the carpet hushes footsteps. Inside, the cool, dry air wraps you in paper and dust. Miss Torres has brought a tray of lemon bars, a quiet offering. Food helps, she says, and she's right. The bite is tart enough to pull your face into a small, grateful pucker. On the community table is a box labeled Memories of 2004. People have begun to drop notes in small, folded rectangles. The song you heard everywhere that summer, the scent of a specific shampoo, a bus transfer, a class schedule. You add one without deciding to. A description of the way the war memorial's right hand gleams a little too bright. You don't try to interpret it. You just give it back to the town. In the back corner, the microfilm machine hulks like a metal dinosaur. You've always loved its mechanical purr, the way it makes time into something you can scroll. You load the spool with the slow care you learned in high school when you needed a photo of the 1979 championship team for a yearbook spread. The screen glows blue-white. You crank forward to October 2004. Headlines become large again, then small, then large. The carousel of community life spins. PTA bake sale totals, a debate about a stop sign, and a column about why the apple crop is late. Then the articles begin. Search continues for student. Volunteers needed at Riverwalk. Candlelight vigil planned. The photographs, grainy, kind, show a town squinting into flash. You run your finger along the glass, and you're not sure whether you want to go back or forward. Back at the counter, the librarian mentions that there will be a town hall meeting tonight and that the church has offered their fellowship hall. The chairs are the metal kind that bite your thighs when you forget and sit in shorts. You nod. You'll go. You tell yourself it's not your job to hold a community's grief and confusion. but you live here. So it is. On your way out, your foot scuffs something under the bulletin board. A paper star, cut from gold foil, no bigger than your palm, with a tiny hole punched at the top where a string might have been threaded. You pick it up. On the face, written in neat block letters, is a name you don't recognize. Beneath it, 1,985, 2004. You think someone made stars with the names of lost people for a vigil, and this one slipped free and drifted under the board where time forgot it. You set it back onto the table gently. Little objects carry so much and ask so little in return. Afternoon leans in with a pressure of heat that wasn't in the morning forecast. The air smells metallic, bakery yeasty, and then, finally, like rain. When it comes, it's not gradual. It's a sudden percussion, drumming on car roofs and porch awnings, flattening grass into a darker, obedient green. You stand under the eave of the hardware store and watch a river form along the curb. The owner, a man who can fix anything, except perhaps his own heartache, steps out with a push broom and guides the water like a shepherd. Across the street, the TV van's dish glints wet. The reporter holds a folder over their head and keeps talking, because that is what reporters do. In the wash of weather, you remember, out of nowhere, a class you took in college, cognitive psychology, and 1 week on eyewitness testimony. The professor argued, and the case studies seemed to show, that our minds are not cameras, they are storytellers, and storytellers sometimes trade accuracy for coherence. You recall the open argument that still stretches across conferences and journals, whether stress sharpens memory into a crystalline spear, or melts it into something that takes the shape of the vessel it's poured into. The debate feels particularly sharp now, because you know some people will swear they saw him where he wasn't, and others will insist they didn't when maybe they did. Truth, today, is a path you must walk with care, heel rolling to toe, eyes open. The rain lets up enough to cross to the bakery. Inside, the glass cases look like museum displays for things that won't last. Cinnamon rolls lacquered to a shine, croissants with visible layers, and a pie with a scarred crust like a moon that's been through something. You order a coffee refill and a slice of something lemony. 2 women at the next table are whispering, but their whispers land in your lap anyway, like birds that don't honor fences. They talk about the suspect's house. They talk about his kindness to his mother. They talk about Lena's backpack and whether it was really found in the river or whether that was just a rumor that felt real long enough to become furniture. One of them mentions the bingo cage, and the other laughs in a way that isn't funny at all. You stare into the swirls of your coffee until they settle, a galaxy resolving. Evening comes a half hour earlier because the sky is still heavy. You arrive at the church before the doors open and walk the little loop of sidewalk around the building. The fellowship hall inside is bright with fluorescent sincerity. A table of cookies, a line of coffee urns, and creamer in little plastic cups that crack like eggs. Folding chairs are set up in rows. You pick a seat near the aisle because it feels like you might need to leave to breathe, and also like you might need to come back quickly to breathe. People fill in, rain-dotted, carrying umbrellas that drip quietly onto the linoleum. The mayor speaks first, careful on the tightrope between caution and comfort. The detective follows, his tie now tighter, his posture more squared. He doesn't say much he hasn't said already, but he says it here, slowly, so that information becomes communal. He explains that an arrest is a beginning, not an end. That evidence must be tested twice, then tested again, and that a name is not guilt, even if the paper prints it in the same font the high school uses for graduation programs. He nods toward the back of the room, where you notice, only then, a small cluster of out-of-town investigators, jackets with acronyms stitched over their hearts. Their faces are attentive, but remote, like people temporarily living in a hotel. He opens the floor for questions, and questions arrive in tender, clumsy handfuls. An older man asks if there will finally be a memorial. A teen asks if the pool will open on time. A woman with careful hair asks about the chain of custody for the fabric. The detective answers each as best he can. The librarian steps to the microphone and says, simply, "We have set aside a quiet corner in the library for anyone who needs it. No questions asked. You can just sit." The room breathes out. You raise your hand without meaning to. When called, your voice comes out steadier than you feel. "What do we do?" you ask. "With our uncertainty? While we wait?" The detective's face softens by a degree you can't measure, but can feel. "You take care of each other," he says. "You keep showing up." The answer is not useful. And also, it is the most useful thing. After the meeting, people linger in clusters, like islands at low tide. You find yourself next to Miss Torres, who is telling a small circle about a little-known bit of local history. The river flooded in 1937, and the town moved the schoolhouse 18 inches when they rebuilt it, just enough to realign it with the new street. You love this fact, more than you can explain. 18 inches, as if precision could persuade water to behave. You tuck it into your pocket of truths and wonder which ones will rattle there when you walk home. On your way out, someone has propped open the side door with a wooden wedge shaped like a tiny doorstop house. You pause and look back. The fellowship hall is already transitioning from solemn to ordinary. The custodian has started stacking the chairs, metal legs clacking, while two teens throw out half-drunk cups of coffee, laughing softly about nothing and everything. Life is so relentlessly itself. It keeps happening even as it grieves. The street outside is rinsed clean. Worms writhe on the pavement, confused by the flood. The wet asphalt smells like a promise that the air will be lovely in the morning. You walk past the police station, lights bright in the lobby, a dispatcher's voice spilling faintly through the glass like a distant song. In the holding area beyond what you can see, a man sits. You don't think of his name because you're trying to keep the narrative from hardening around a single load-bearing beam. You try, instead, to hold the full architecture. Lena's smile on the faded poster, the gleam of the statue's hand, the bingo cage, the fence that held a whisper for years, and a lab's quiet click when numbers find each other. You detour to the memorial one last time, drawn by the paradox of stone that asks to be looked at in order to remember moving things. The soldier's hand is still polished in that impossible way. The rain has cleaned him and also made the streaks show more plainly. You run your fingers along the base where the names are carved. A moth bumps your cheek, a brief, soft impact, like a tiny thrown pillow. You realize then that in 1917, when the first of these names left and didn't return, families in this town stood in their kitchens and tried to understand how absence can feel so physically heavy. The fact that the government introduced the first daylight saving time system in the USS during World War I floats into your head for no reason you can anchor, except that time itself can be rewritten by policy and by grief. And tonight, you feel both. On the way home, you pass the suspect street, drawn by the kind of curiosity you pretend you don't have. The house looks obstinately normal. A porch light on a timer, a fern that has gone leggy, and a doormat that says, "Welcome with the..." a little scuffed off. There's police tape at the garage, wind tugging it so it whispers to itself. A neighbor waters petunias in a way that says, "I'm not looking. You keep walking because you are not a spectator." Except, of course, you are. We all are, in this era when lives can be streamed and packaged and replayed. Your fingers itch to search his name again, to see if new information has bloomed, but you put your phone away. Not everything needs to be refreshed in real time. Some things need to settle like silt, then be examined when the water clears. At your own door, you pause, keys in hand. Inside, the fan will still be whispering. The bed will be a small geography of comfort. You stand in the threshold and listen to the neighborhood. A screen door thwops shut 2 houses down. Somewhere, a low laugh. Wind moving through the sycamore leaves like pages turned by invisible hands. You think about Lena, about being 19 and borrowing other people's songs to help define your own outline. You think about the comment threads that will harden into opinions and the rumors that will sprout like mushrooms in the damp underside of the internet. You think about the open questions, the academic kind and the human kind that won't respect your bedtime. You brush your teeth. You set your phone screen down so its light won't pull your attention like a fishing lure. When you climb into bed, the sheets are cool at first, then warm. The fan hums round the edges of your thinking until everything feels a little softer, less sharp. Outside, the repaired cicadas try a different rhythm, one that sounds like a misremembered song. You tell yourself a story about a town that keeps its porch lights on a little longer than necessary. You let the ending be a place you haven't reached yet. Your last thought before sleep comes is a promise to show up where you can. At the library's quiet corner, at the diner where the sugar clumps on rainy days, at the memorial where names wait to be respoken. You breathe in and out, and the night holds. You wake before dawn to the pale suggestion of light sneaking through your curtains, the kind that makes everything look like it's waiting. The world feels hung between inhale and exhale. Outside, the street glimmers faintly from last night's rain, puddles holding fragments of the sky like tiny mirrors. The air smells of damp soil and that faint, clean sweetness that comes when the world has just been rinsed. You sit up, stretch, and for a moment, forget why your chest feels tight. Then it returns, not a sharp pain, more like a hand pressing gently on your heart. The memory of the case, the arrest, the eyes in the diner TV. You decide to walk before the town wakes. You slip into a sweatshirt, as quietly as you can, and step into the cool air. The first bird song feels like a single note hung in space. It's early enough that the streetlights are still blinking, some fading to gold, some stubbornly white. You follow Maple Street again, where the poster has finally been taken down. Someone removed it in the night, maybe out of respect, maybe to clear space for whatever comes next. In its place, a new flyer. Community gathering at the Riverwalk tonight, 8 p.m. You trace the tape edge with a finger. The paper is fresh, the edges crisp, and the ink barely dry. Down by the water, the mist floats low, softening every line. The world looks kind for a moment. You walk the familiar path, shoes whispering on the wooden planks. Every few steps, your mind drifts back to that fence on Route 12, the piece of fabric, and the years it took for truth to rise from soil. It reminds you of something you read once, an article about ice cores in Antarctica. Scientists drilled deep into glaciers to read air trapped hundreds of thousands of years ago. Each bubble is a whisper from another world, preserved until someone listens. That's what this feels like. A whisper from 2004, released when the conditions finally thawed. The academic debate still loops in your head, too, the one about truth versus memory. Some argue that truth is fixed, waiting to be unearthed like a fossil. Others believe it's liquid, taking the shape of whoever holds it. You've been holding this one a long time, haven't you? This cold case shaped your town and your sense of safety. Maybe both sides are right. Maybe the truth is fossil and water at once solid enough to last, fluid enough to find its way out. You sit on a bench by the river, hands tucked in your sleeves. The air moves around you, lifting strands of hair, carrying the low hum of distant traffic. The bridge creaks, an old wooden sigh. Then, from nowhere, a memory uncoils. The vigil from years ago. Candles cupped in hands. The wind stealing flames. Someone singing off-key, but with such sincerity that people joined in anyway. You remember standing beside a girl who cried silently, a boy tracing names in wax strips, the air thick with hope and sorrow. You remember the smell of wax and rain mixed together, something fragile, something human. A jogger passes, nodding. The sun climbs higher, soft gold, brushing the water's surface. The world doesn't pause, not even for tragedy. The bakery will open soon. The library lights will flicker on. The detective will write his report, filling in the blanks the public will never see. Life doesn't stop for justice. It folds it in, layer by layer, until it becomes part of the town's DNA. You rise and start back toward home. The first car of the day passes you, a blue pickup with a crack across the windshield. The driver waves. You wave back. It's reflex, small-town muscle memory. When you reach your porch, the paper is waiting, folded neatly, ink smudged from dew. The headline doesn't surprise you anymore. Suspect to appear in court Monday. Below it, a smaller line. Community seeks healing. You close your eyes and breathe, the words fluttering against your fingertips, like something alive. That night, the riverwalk fills with people again. Lanterns line the path, small floating lights like spirits adrift. Children chase the reflections, laughing, unaware of the heavy history they're running across. You join the crowd quietly, standing near the railing where Lena's bicycle once leaned. Someone hands you a candle. You light it from another flame. Fire passed person to person, a soft chain of care. The air smells faintly of wax again. The river holds the glow in broken streaks. A speaker, a woman with silver hair, steps to the microphone. She thanks everyone for coming. She doesn't name the suspect. She doesn't even mention guilt or innocence. She talks instead about remembering without freezing, about carrying stories forward without being crushed beneath them. Justice, she says, is not a single act. It's a practice. Her voice trembles slightly, then steadies. You think about that. A practice, like breathing, like walking, like kindness. The crowd grows quiet. People release their lanterns, one by one. You lower yours gently into the water. It drifts away, spinning slowly, then steadies and moves with the current. A little fire on a long journey. Around you, people murmur prayers, hopes, and half-thought sentences that fade into the sound of water. Above, the sky deepens into velvet. Stars prick through. Someone begins to hum a low tune. Maybe the same one from that vigil years ago, and others join. You close your eyes and let it wrap around you. The town feels lighter somehow. Not because the mystery is solved, but because the weight is shared. You feel it in your bones. A collective exhale after decades of holding breath. When you walk home, the night air is warm, but a breeze still moves through the sycamores, rustling like soft applause. The lights in windows are gentle now. The soldier on the memorial keeps his quiet watch. The diner is closed, its sign flickering once before going dark. Everything is slower and quieter, like the town itself is resting. You pause at your porch again and look up. A single star lingers, bright and stubborn. You make a wish, not for answers, but for peace. The kind that stays. You step inside, turn off the lamp, and let the darkness settle around you like a blanket. The fan hums. Your heartbeat finds its rhythm. You close your eyes. Maybe someday we'll know the truth. But for now, sleep well.